Good day. My name is Charles Gave. I wrote a book a few years ago in French called Un libéral nommé Jésus, was translated in English as Jesus, the Unknown Economist. And I've just a year or two ago, before COVID, I had a request by Mr. Vicente Bocetta to translate this book in Spanish and then use it in their different organizations. One of them being, if you allow me, because I'm not very good in Spanish, let me go. Centro Diego de Covarrubias. Yeah, Covarrubias. So whatever, and I'm greatly honored. You see, this book has a strange story, and I would like to mention it in a few words. Around 2001, 2002, I wrote a book in France called Les lions menés par des ânes, or lions led by donkeys. It was a book on how the euro was going to destroy Europe. And to explain why the euro was a very bad idea, I explained how a real economy functioned with the banks, the central banks, the rentier, the entrepreneur, the risk taker, the financial market, and so on. It was a very small book, and it was as simple as I could write it. And the story was amusing because I wrote it in Gascony in France, in the southwest of France during the summer. And I wrote a chapter every day, and then I had this chapter read by the women of my family. They are mostly in fashion, and if they did not understand, I rewrote it the following day. So it was really an attempt to make people understand how the economy really works. It was quite a bestseller in France. I sold more than 35,000 copies, which for a book on economy written by an unknown guy was quite a success. And then a lot of my friends, especially of the Christian type, told me, this book is very good, but it's not proper, it's not what the gospel tells us. And I told them, oh, interesting idea. So I decided to reread the Gospels, and I discovered a book that was extraordinarily tough. It's like a rough diamond, extraordinarily demanding for each individual, but it was perfectly in accordance with everything that I'd written in my first book. So I decided to write the second book as an answer to the guys that told me that my first book was not Christian. It is more Christian than most of the things that the church has been telling us about the economy for the last 20 centuries. So let me explain exactly what I discovered. First, methodologically, I took only the words of the Christ. I didn't take what the disciples said or how they interpreted it. I didn't look at what St. Thomas or St. Augustine said about that particular word. I simply take the rough words that were reported by the evangelist. And that's roughly 1/4 of the gospel, the words of Christ, nothing else. And it was fascinating because first, these words have a different music. When you read the gospel, you discover something extraordinary. And it is that nobody talks like Jesus, to the point that if a word of Jesus hasn't been reported in the official gospel, but in one of the secondary gospels, you recognize that it's him that said it, because he doesn't speak like everybody else. So, and what is it that you discover? The two main messages of these words by Jesus are simple. The first one, which I found fascinating, is God doesn't know how to count but to one. is interested in having a relationship with you personally, you as an individual, not you as a member of a party or of a union or what have you, you personally. And he has for you probably a kind of project and the role. Basically, you have to live through your life to discover exactly what God wanted you to do and how you should do it. So what emerged from that is you're a happy person if you discover the project that God had for you and you try to accomplish it, and you're happy like hell if you do something else. So it's the first thing, God knows how to count, but to one, that's all. The second one is even stranger. The second one is everybody who takes risks in the gospel is always forgiven if he fails. You talk about the prodigal son or the prostitute and everything. It's the guy that takes a risk is always, or the woman is always forgiven. The guys that are never forgiven are the one that take no risk. The rentier, the rich man, and so on. So what emerged from this book are two ideas that were basically absolutely central to our civilization. Is that the primacy of the individual over the group. You have the right to say, I don't want to do what the rest of my tribe is doing. This is absolutely normal. This is in the gospel. And the second thing that you have to believe is that it doesn't matter if you basically fail because you tried. If you failed and you tried, then you can come back. It's okay. But if you never try, if you simply try to accumulate things and never do anything with them, then you go to hell. And it's so these two messages are extraordinarily strong, and to a large extent they are at the origin of our civilization. The primacy of the individual and the acceptance of risk and failure. That's basically on these two pillars that our civilization was built. So that's what I discovered first. How I've built that book is the first thing that I do is I explain why me, an economist that knows very little about theology, feels entitled to discuss the gospel as an economist. And the reason is very simple, is that strange as it may seem, so Christ keeps talking about the economy. Look at the talents, look at the vineyards, it's absolutely extraordinary. 2/3 of the gospel about economic matters. And people keep telling me, yeah, but it's an image, it's not the reality. Well, I tend to believe that if the Christ believes something, it's probably worth believing in it. So that's the first thing that is obvious. I try to describe the gospel, to read the gospel as an economist, knowing what I know today. The second thing is that when you read the Bible, when you read the Quran, when you read the Torah and so on, it's full of economic mistakes. Crap. When you read the gospel, there is not one economic mistake. Basically, everything that he says has been proven by theory, even if it doesn't talk about economics. So I found that fascinating. It's the only holy books that I know that it's not full of crap when you talk about the economy. And then I took I then explained what the socialist theory was compared to what you have in the gospel. And the socialist theory is basically the inverse of what you have in the gospel. So I do believe very strongly that anybody who basically reads the gospel cannot be a socialist. Basically because socialism is the end of individual responsibility. And the gospel is a call to individual responsibility. So I believe that the socialism has been invented to prevent the gospel from being understood by normal people. And then I took one after the other all the great parables, the talents, the rich man, and so on. And I read them as an economist. And I tried to explain each one of them. And what emerged from that is the sanctity of property rights, which is very obvious. the right to do whatever you want about your own assets. The fact that when you have excess debt in a system, you have to find a solution to dispose of that debt. So I discover a lot of things that are very important and that are never taught properly by the Catholic Church. So I don't want to say anything bad about the Catholic Church. After all, it's my mother. But I would simply, and that's why I like the efforts made by you in Spain in your organization, like by Father Sirico in the US, some people in France or in Italy. The gospel has to be explained by people that know something about the economy in order to avoid the priest from explaining it in a way which is silly. The church has made mistakes in history. It was transferred to us the books, the words, and it's very important. But I think explaining what the economy is all about to priests would be a massive improvement for the world and for the church. So I was hoping that I could go to Spain to present my book. For family reasons I cannot. But Vicente has my email. If you have any question, I will be happy to answer, and I wish you a very good reading. It takes an hour and a half, and I can tell you something very strange. When I started writing that book, I did not know that I was going to write what I wrote. It has been the biggest surprise in my life. When I reread that book 10 years later, I am amazed by what I wrote. So there is something strange that happened there. And I hope you will have the same feeling when you read it. Thank you so much.